Students, and welcome to week 3 in Multimedia Techniques 219. I'm super excited to kick off this week because we are going to be working on scheduling our shoots. I've already posted on D2L how you can go about scheduling your shoot, and then I've also put on a quick video if you can't shoot this week because of COVID. I want you working on project 2, and there's another video on D2L under week 3. If you look at the contents and go to week 3, you'll see another video about what I want you to do if you've been affected by COVID and can't shoot this week. I want you to switch gears and start working on project 2 a little bit. That way you're not losing time, and that can be done from home. So a couple quick things I wanted to go over about shooting. Some of the techniques you may or may not, if you're going to use a DSLR, you may want to have or bring a tripod with you. We have some to borrow that are in the back room. Just come and see me and I can get you set up with one of those. But without further ado, let's dive into this week's presentation.
Make sure to give yourself plenty of time to shoot. You may be surprised how much time this part can take. I would review your shots as you go to make sure you get what you need as you're going. When you get to the editing part, you'll be glad that you did this. So you're going to want to research your camera. I've curated a bunch of very helpful videos within this presentation, but for more specifics on how you need to set up your camera for shooting, it's just a Google search away. Get to know your camera's video functions. Doing the research ahead of time on using your camera as a video camera will help you out tremendously. Many of you have DSLRs, and I'm including additional videos on what settings are best for you to use on the news feed for you to check out. But the good thing is here, there is a ton of information on Google and YouTube. The key step here is to research before you shoot. You don't want to have to test a lot of things as you're going. You want to be somewhat comfortable shooting with your camera and the settings before you begin shooting. So let's talk about lights and sound. Don't worry about the sound at this point. We're going to work on that later. And lights, you don't need to go out and buy a bunch of lights. You can simply use anything you have around your house, lamps or flashlights even, to provide some additional light. But I recommend that you shoot most of your footage during the day and try and keep all the lighting very natural. While this tip may seem a little obvious, I just want to double check and make sure that I go over. Make sure you prep your camera. Clean your lenses. And the iPhone too. Clean the iPhone lens. You'll be surprised at the buildup that can happen there and you don't even realize it and can affect your footage. So make sure you clean your camera lenses. And then the next thing I would say for an iPhone user or any cell phone user is go ahead and switch your phone onto airplane mode. You don't want any texts or phone calls or emails to interrupt you while you are shooting. This will allow you to focus and get better quality footage. So last week we went over the 7 basic camera movements to keep in mind while you were storyboarding. So I wanted to go into further detail on exactly how to shoot and film these. The zoom, pan, tilt, dolly, truck, pedestal, and racking focus. I found a collection of videos that are going to help you achieve those, both with tripods and without tripods. So I'm going to let these videos play and explain a lot of the techniques to you, and then if you have any additional questions and you are confused by anything that you see here, please feel free to reach out to me.
So what are the best settings for your DSLR when it comes to creating and shooting videos? In this video, I'm going to break down the exact settings I'm using to get this shot right here, as well as how to set up your DSLR so it looks the best. Coming up. Hey, what's up guys? Sean here with Think Media TV, helping you go further, faster in media. And on this channel, we do tech gear reviews, video gear reviews, as well as even how to use your gear videos just like this one. So if you're new here, consider subscribing. And hey, at any point during this video, I'll list out all the gear that we're using to produce this video in the description below, in case you want to see the camera models, lenses, lighting, and things like that. Let's jump into the tutorial. So if you're watching this video, you already know that DSLRs can create awesome looking videos. So can mirrorless cameras, but sometimes they're hard to get the settings right. Like how do you get them to look right and produce a good looking video shot? Maybe you see other people's content, you're like, why doesn't my, I have the same camera, but why doesn't my video footage look like that? So I wanna break down the exact settings that I use step by step so you can apply them to your DSLR or your mirrorless camera to get great results when it comes to video. So now let's jump behind the camera to see how this shot is set up. Okay, so we're gonna jump into the setup right here. In this particular video, we're shooting on a Canon 70D. We use a Rode mic. It's got a tripod. We're shooting with a ring light, just in my office right here. And so let's look at the settings and the order at which we go through these to get the perfect shot. And again, this is gonna apply to any Canon camera, Nikon camera that you're using, or even mirrorless cameras as well are gonna, the same principles are definitely gonna apply. So let's jump into it right now. Okay, so the first setting that you wanna think about when you're setting up your camera is actually your frame rate. And so you wanna know what is the frame rate of the video that you're shooting. And so on a 70D here, I have pretty much the option between 30 frames per second or 24 frames per second. If you're international, you're gonna be on PAL, so you could do like 25 frames. But you wanna know what that is. And so we shoot our videos at 30 frames a second. And so we're at HD setting at 30 frames. Some cameras are doing 60 now. And here's why you wanna know what your frame rate is. Because it's 30 frames, the first setting you wanna set is actually your shutter speed. And so that's this number right here. And to get smooth motion in video, your shutter speed should be double the frame rate of your video. So because we're at 30 frames, that's why we set it at 60. If we were shooting at 24 frames, you'd shoot it at 50. You get as close as possible. And so you'd shoot 50. So that's the first number that you want to set up right. What that does, if it's wrong, is it sometimes gives you a jittery picture. Sometimes people want that. They do it intentionally for effect. But if you want your video motion to be perfectly smooth, aligned with the frame rate, then you want to make sure this is set up right. Also, sometimes LED lights and different lights will be blinking, and the blink is caused by incongruence between the shutter speed and the frame rate of the video. So first off, we're at 30 frames on our 70D here, 1080, 30 frames. And next up, we will shoot the shutter speed, and so we'll make sure that's set to 60. Now, the next thing that we want to set is our aperture. And in this case, we want to set it based on the lower this number could be if we had a fast lens. If you had a lens that's kind of like the nifty 50 that goes down to say 1.8, the blurrier the background would be. So if we have, say my hand is in focus, the background is blurry, a lower aperture number will give you more of a blurry background. It also will give you better low light. And so sometimes the lower this number can be, the better it'll work in low light. So whatever your aperture is gonna be, you wanna set that next. And in most cases, I make it as low as possible. So if we're already zoomed in on this image, I got a picture of my wife and I right there where a face would be. If we're gonna be zoomed in like this, this is as low as it goes. So typically I go as low as that can go. And then that allows me to then do ISO last. And so your ISO, once your shutter speed is pretty much set, typically. So that's at 60 no matter what. In this case, I'm as low as I can go. When this lens is all the way zoomed in, is 5.6. That's as low as it goes. So now, if you tap your shutter button, you have an exposure meter right here. And right in the center is that white line is telling you your shot is evenly exposed. So in this case, it's a little underexposed. So then what you can use ISO for at the end is you can go up to get more light in your image. And now it's perfectly exposed across the image, or you could go down if it's overexposed based on your ISO settings. Now, the downside to ISO is that on most cameras, the higher this number gets, the lower quality the image is. And so on a crop frame sensor like this, I typically never would want to go over 800 actually, and even that is a little bit high. And the way to prevent that is to have more light. So in this case, we're shooting with this ring light. If we actually turn up the brightness here, Now it's all the way maxed out. Now we're a little overexposed based on when we tap the shutter and get our exposure meter. So now we could take our ISO and we could actually drop it down. Now we're at 640 and you have got a shot that is set up. To recap, you've got your 60 at 5.6 and you got 640 ISO. And now the video content shot on this is gonna look great, but we're not done yet. The kind of final step here that I like to do is actually set white balance with a gray card. Now, I'm not sure the science behind why gray works for great white balance. You can also use white, but these are great cards. You can get these on Amazon. I'll post a link in the description below. But what you actually do with this, I have it set to auto white balance right now. And that sometimes will turn out okay. But white balance is what really is gonna make your video look right for skin tones. So especially if you're like a beauty or a lifestyle YouTuber, you're trying to do, or an art YouTuber, and you're trying to like get accurate color reproduction, or you just wanna make great looking videos, setting custom white balance is great. And sometimes too, like even in this room, we have different light sources all around the room. And so this is gonna say, okay, here's the perfect color for this shot exactly as it is right here. So to set this, all you really got to do is you put the gray card out there to fill the frame. You actually take a photo of it. And then on this camera, and pretty much every camera, DSLR, mirrorless, is going to have this option. You go in and you pick custom white balance. And then what you do is you set it according to that image. And now it's using that image as a reference. And then you can just go in to your white balance and you make sure to set it on custom. So now that white balance of the shot is set according to this white based on this ring light's light shining on that. And that's gonna give you pretty much accurate color representation. And based on what we're seeing here, it's looking pretty good, especially because we can see a blue poster, the green, the yellow, and our human eye, based on what we're seeing on the screen here, it looks accurate. And your most important thing is your skin tone. That's really what you want to be most accurate. So setting your custom white balance with a gray card, you can also do this. You could do it with the white side. You could also do it with the white piece of paper and some other things as well. You just follow that exact same framework. Okay, so those are the basics, but there are a few more things that I want to caution you of, as well as go a little further for some problems that you might run into. A couple things. Number one, if you want to have good video, you want definitely good lighting. So in this particular case, this is the Halo Prismatic LED lighting, which is actually specialized for good color reproduction for an LED light. But regardless of what your lighting is, this shot would look like a baked potato if I did not have lighting in the shot. So definitely always consider your lighting and what kind of lighting you have, and we'll link up to a playlist of our lighting videos and lighting training. And then the other thing to consider is your set. Having a good set, being off the background of your wall, potentially the colors and the aesthetic in your set, all of that's important. But we'll leave that for another video. But let's look at just a few things that could come up. We're gonna jump to a different lens, which is a lot faster. And what faster means is that the aperture can kind of go lower. So in this wide angle lens, when we had it all the way zoomed in, we were at 5.6. And maybe some of your kit lenses, that's what you have. Well, then your settings are gonna be similar to that. But what happens if you get a faster lens, and how does that affect things? Let's check it out right now. So we just took off this 10-18 wide angle lens, and this was the one that was set at 5.6 when it was zoomed in. And now we have a 24mm lens, and the settings are the same. So we have 60 shutter speed, 5.6 on the aperture, and then 640 on the ISO, and we're exposed almost perfectly. But this lens, and you might have some lenses like this lens actually can go all the way up to 2.8. So you see what happened there. Now that put our exposure a lot higher because this lens is a lot better in lower light. Plus, it also is better for depth of field and things like that. So when you have potentially an image that if you're close to the camera, you're going to be in focus and you're going to get that nice blurry background. So what we would do in this case, remember at 30 frames per second, we don't want to mess with the shutter speed. And if we do want as much blurry background as possible, then all we have to do is actually drop our ISO down to hopefully get to the right exposure. And one thing that could potentially happen if we brighten up this light even more and we're still overexposed, this is where you might get into the trouble where, say, it's a little overexposed and the ISO cannot go any lower. This is where now you have to make a decision to, okay, do I want the shutter speed to actually be off? So now at 80, everything is exposed correctly, but we just broke our rule, right? 30 frames per second. Now we're actually off. And so it'll slightly affect the motion. And the more out of, whack that potentially gets, the more jittery and weird the motion could look. But then you just make a conscious decision if you want to do that or not. And the one other thing that you can do, probably not necessary for most people, is again, you could always dim your light. Like we can just do that right as we're doing right here. We dim it down a little bit, drop our shutter, and now we're in a perfect exposed shot. We've got the good white balance based off our gray card. We've got everything set up nice based on this lens. And you can imagine this one goes to 2.8. A very popular Canon lens is the Nifty 50. It goes to 1.8. If that's the case, what we would really want to do, you can imagine the ISO's as low as it goes. We don't want to change this number. If this was at 1.8, what we'd probably have to do is reduce the light even more so that it could be exposed as much as possible so we could get that, or exposed correctly so we could get that blurry background. Question of the day: what is your biggest challenge currently when it comes to creating videos and content online? Let me know in the comment section below, because we'd always love to create future videos to help you go further faster in media. So thanks so much for checking out this video. Definitely subscribe for more videos just like this. And if you haven't downloaded the Think Media TV Video Gear Buyer's Guide, that guide actually goes through all the different cameras, lenses, microphones, lighting that we use for every different budget. So if you want to grab that, it's totally free. There's a link in the description below, as well as on the YouTube card. Until next time, Think Media TV is helping you go further, faster in media. Keep crushing it, and we will talk soon. 3, 2, 1. Oh man, those cuticles look good today. Okay.
We'll get a free trial of Skillshare Premium membership. Now, if you're looking to shoot cinematic video with your phone, how do you do it? How do you make your footage stand out compared to everybody else's footage that's being shot using a phone? Well, in this video, I'm going to show you how you can shoot slow motion cinematic iPhone footage just like this. We're combining slow motion, camera movement, and a shallow depth of field to achieve this look. It's nice and easy. I'm going to walk you through it step by step. It's coming up. Hey everyone, Steve here from Learn Online Video, and today I'm in these beautiful autumnal woods in the southwest of England, where I'm going to be showing you how you can shoot cinematic footage using your phone. No fancy gimbals, no tripods or sliders, just your phone. Now I'm using the iPhone 11, but use whatever phone you have. The iPhone 11 comes with 2 lenses, the standard and the wide, but if you don't have the wide, then just use your standard lens. And if you're really keen, you could always pick yourself up one of these clip-on wide-angle lenses. You can pick these up pretty cheap on Amazon. I will link some in the description below. In terms of camera settings, I'm going to be shooting everything in 1080p and switching between video and slow motion mode. My aim for today is to capture all the shots needed to create a short 30-second cinematic sequence that I will show you at the end of this video. Now, if ever you're shooting a sequence of any kind, it's really important to think about an opening shot to that sequence, a shot that will best establish that sequence for your audience. Now in this case, I want to shoot a nice wide establishing shot of this location so it's clear where this sequence is taking place. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to switch from my standard lens to my wide angle lens. Just look at the difference between these two shots. The wide angle lens gives us much more information. The standard is still okay, we can still see that we're in the woods, but the wide angle sets the scene much better. Now, this is really, really important, okay? I'm going to lock my focus and exposure by tapping and holding on my focal point. I'm going to be doing this for every single shot today. That way it prevents an exposure or focus change halfway through your shot, which just looks amateur and awful. Now, I'm going to hit record and slowly start to walk forwards. Now, the iPhone 11 has some pretty good image stabilization, so I'm not too worried about getting a shaky shot, but I am walking heel toe, and doing my best to avoid any shaky camera movement. Now, the reason I'm walking forward like this is because when the camera pushes forward, it implies that something is about to happen at this location. So it's perfect for an opening shot. Right, now let's talk about how we can make our footage look much more cinematic, because that was rather basic. An important shot, the opening shot, but a little basic. Now, as videographers and filmmakers, we often crave that soft focus, blurry background look to our footage, but it's not always easy to achieve that look, especially when shooting on a phone, but it is possible. With the right knowledge and the right technique, it's absolutely possible. Here's how it's done. Okay, now here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna open up the camera app on our phone. We're gonna find a focal point. Something small is best for this, with plenty of distance between your focal point and the background. We're gonna select slow motion. I'm just using the standard lens for this. And we're gonna get really close. I'm talking just a few inches away. And then we're gonna tap and hold. This will lock our focus and exposure. This bit's crucial because it's what will give us that shallow depth of field look. And we're gonna hit record. And now we're just gonna orbit around our focal point like this. And then stop recording. Right, now let's play this back. And just like that, we've got our subject in crisp focus and an out of focus background. This instantly gives us a much more cinematic and professional look to our footage. Okay, now here's another technique for making your footage look much more cinematic, okay? Find a focal point. I'm just gonna use this fallen tree. Now, pay close attention to where your lens is, okay? It always sits in one of the corners. Now, I wanna get as close as I can to this branch. So rather than have my phone this way, I'm flipping it this way so my lens is nice and close to my focal point. Now I'm going to use slow motion. This time I'm in 240 frames per second, but if you haven't got 240, just stick with 120. Now I'm going to get nice and close to my focal point. I'm going to tap and hold to lock my focus and exposure. I'm going to hit record. Now this time I'm going to pull back and I'm going to move my camera forward, moving it as close to this branch as I can. And I'm gonna pull it back again like this. Now, stop recording, let's watch this back. And just like that, we've got this epic slow motion push forward with objects moving towards the camera, gradually coming into focus. Also, once you've mastered this technique, try adding a slight rotation to your camera movement. Try this pushing forwards and pulling back, and use which one works best for you. Now, knowing how to move your camera and capture shots like this is relatively straightforward with a little bit of practice. You just need the knowledge. Personally, I'm always looking to learn new things and gain new skills so that I can be more creative. And this is where Skillshare comes in. Skillshare is an online training community for creatives. It offers thousands of inspiring classes for creative and curious people just like us on topics including illustration, design, photography, video, freelancing, and much, much more. If you're a creative looking to learn, explore, and discover new things, then Skillshare is the place to do it. Skillshare literally has thousands of classes to help you grow as a creative. For example, if you're into mobile filmmaking, which I assume you are if you've made it this far into the tutorial, then the iPhone filmmaking class by Caleb Babcock and Niles Gray is an absolute must. These guys are great, really fun to watch, and cover everything from what apps and gear you need to get the most cinematic footage, as well as methods of filming and the basics of transferring and editing your footage. Put simply, Skillshare helps you grow as a creative. Gain those extra skills needed to turn your hobby into a career, land the clients you've always wanted to work with, make more money, and be more creative. Whatever your goal when it comes to creativity, Skillshare can help you get there. With classes to fit your schedule and skill level for less than $10 a month with an annual subscription, you can binge knowledge to your heart's content. And the first 1,000 people to use the link in my description will get a free trial of Skillshare Premium membership. You've got nothing to lose. Use the link, take a class, soak up some knowledge, and get creative. Now let's talk about a few more simple camera moves that you can do with your phone to make your footage look much more cinematic. The look up, pull down. Find a focal point, anything tall will do. I'm going to use this tree. Point your camera up, select slow motion, and pull your camera down. Keep it as close to your focal point as possible. The result, an epic looking slow motion shot with a unique perspective. Another great move for making your footage stand out. The light flicker. A surefire way to up your cinematography game is to play with light. Find a focal point that is directly in front of the sun and shoot towards it. The aim here is to reveal the sun and make it flicker. Now there are two ways of doing this. You could move your focal point, like I'm doing here, by gently moving the branch. See how the light subtly flickers through the leaves, creating these beautiful lens flares and light leaks? Or you could, of course, move your camera like I am here. Just look at that flickering light, the soft focus background, much more dramatic, but equally beautiful. The look up, rotate. A nice simple one this. Find a tall subject or focal point. Trees and buildings work great for this. Point your camera up, shoot wide, and slowly rotate your camera. This creates a very unusual but cinematic looking shot from a perspective not seen often. Another great way to give your footage a much more interesting look. Okay, so I now have all the footage that I need to create a short cinematic sequence. Now let's put all this footage together using music, sound effects, and color grading. So what do you think? Pretty cinematic, right? It's totally achievable for you to do the same. Remember to experiment with this. Try slider shots, try mini jib shots with the camera lifting up to reveal your location. And this is how you capture cinematic footage using your phone. So look, I really hope you found this video useful. If you did, let me know. Give it the old thumbs up. And if you'd like to see more content like this, learn more about video production, you can do that by watching one of my other tutorials just over there. But that's it from me. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next video.
Today, I'm gonna show you some really simple camera techniques that you can use in your videos to make it look more cinematic fast. When I'm shooting a video for a client of mine, there's also a couple of things that I think of when it comes to like camera angles and camera movements, and I usually use a gimbal, but in this video we're gonna cover some things that doesn't require a gimbal or a stabilizer. The first thing is gonna be staying close to the ground with your camera, because staying close to the ground almost instantly gives you this more cinematic feeling to the shot than if you were to get the same shot holding the camera up here. And if you're moving the camera really slowly above the ground, then it almost instantly feels more professional too. It does help a lot having a gimbal or a slider to get those really low panning shots, but if you don't have one of those, then you can actually grab a tripod and attach your camera to it and then hold it upside down, and that automatically gives you a much more steady shot than if you were to do it all handheld because of the weight that the tripod adds. And while we're talking about tripods, there's another thing that you can do to get this like slow tilting moving shot, and that is basically just grabbing the back end of the tripod and then just leaning it forward really slow, and that gives you a really slow camera movement that is really cool to incorporate
into your videos. The next thing is going to be the use of foregrounds, because foregrounds is something that is used to make it feel like the camera is moving more than it actually is, and it almost instantly makes your videos more cinematic. Personally, I use this technique in basically all my videos that I shoot for clients or YouTube or whatever it is, and I usually try to find a foreground that I can move the camera away from or move past depending on what kind of shot that I want to have. And the cool thing is that you don't even have to move the camera much to give it this dynamic feeling and add some sense of depth to your shot. Using close-up shots and detailed shots is something that will make your videos look way more movie-like and more immersive than if you only were to use a wide shot or a medium shot. For example, if I show you a wide shot of me taking my camera out of my camera bag, then that is not going to be as interesting to watch as if you were to include a detailed shot of my hand actually going down into the bag and grabbing the camera. So try to include those kind of shots when you're shooting your video, because that will help to make it look way more professional and way more cinematic when you're cutting to those different shots. Follow the direction of motion, or go with the flow. You want to make sure that you follow the direction of motion of what you are shooting. So say for example that you are shooting a person walking from left to right. Then you want to make sure that your camera is panning from left to right and not from right to left. I think that is kind of self-explanatory, but if you do the opposite, it's just gonna look really weird and your brain is gonna be like, whoa, what is going on here? So always try to follow the direction of motion, because that automatically makes it feel really professional. Then we have the slow movements. So when you're shooting any kind of cinematic footage or video completely handheld, then you want to make sure that you don't move the camera around like this, but you want to do super slow movements with it and try to keep it as close as you can to your body to have the center of gravity as close to you as possible, and then just tilt your body in the direction that you want the camera to move. And if you need to do some handheld shots while you're walking, then try to keep your camera as close to you as possible, bend your knees, and then walk heel to toe as smooth as you can to get the smoothest shot possible. One thing that I do when I don't have my gimbal with me is that I take my Joby Gorilla Pod and then basically like have it as a rifle towards my shoulder and try to keep the camera as steady as possible when I'm walking. This actually works kind of good. Those are a couple of things that I think works really good to make my videos look and feel more cinematic, and I really hope that you found some useful information in this video as well. If you liked the video, make sure you give it a thumbs up, drop a comment if you think it was good. If you haven't subscribed, please do that, that'd be really appreciated. Until next time, Peter from Sweden, out.
And as always, I'm here if you need me, and feel free to stop in at any time. Mondays, I'm available from 10 a.m. to 2:30, Wednesday, 2 to 5:30 p.m. You can text me at 843-267-2110. You can email me. I'm pretty responsive if you text me. I usually text you right back, or Facebook Messenger, or email. Sometimes I'll forget to check my email past 8 p.m., but for the most part I'm always checking it just to make sure that nobody's looking for me with any questions. I try to be responsive. So let me know if you have any questions. I'm here, and I hope you have a great week.